I think the way that Gen Z and millennials look at hosting needs to be studied. I think all of us are feeling the same way. The cost of living is expensive, not to mention groceries are super expensive. The cookouts, all of these events that our families used to host just doesn't look the same anymore because most of us are in apartments. Do I think that hosting is a lot harder today than it was for the previous generation? Yes. Do I think that we should still be hosting and having events and seeing our people? Also, yes. Today we're going to talk about some really inexpensive dishes that you can host. Still feel very luxurious, and it still makes your guests feel like you really put thought into the spread that you were creating. Without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, we're going to talk about Caprese Skewers. And I hope I'm saying that right. That's why I keep looking down at my notebook. I'll pop up a picture here somewhere, but they are mozzarella, tomato, and basil on a skewer. Super simple to make. 3 ingredients, maybe 4, actually 5, if you include the olive oil or balsamic vinegar and some spices that you probably already have. So if I were hosting a dinner party and I was trying to keep my costs low, this is definitely going to be a go-to because they're so good and everyone can agree on mozzarella, some tomatoes, some basil. It's hard to not love something like that. And it makes you think of Italy. It gives off this like European vibe. Most of the inexpensive items that I'm gonna list off also give off that like Italian rustic vibe, you know? Number 2, oh my gosh, so there's a backstory to this one. Spiced nuts. This is my first ever business class flight recently. They brought out a bowl of warm spiced nuts. It made me feel so elegant, so classy, and I had my little glass of champagne and my spiced nuts, and it was dope. I think that is a very simple, elegant touch to whatever party that you're hosting, and again, it's thoughtful. Some of the things that you would need for this is obviously you would need like some sort of mixed assortment of nuts. So like cashews, almonds, your regular peanuts. You would need your seasonings. You can do your seasonings however you please. It's really whatever you like, but garlic, chili powder, maybe some onion powder, maybe. Drizzle some olive oil so all the seasonings stick to the nuts, and make sure whenever you serve them, they're warm. Absolutely delicious. And having warm nuts, like I said, it just makes you feel very luxurious. So if you pair that with like a Prosecco or maybe a champagne, that will have your guests thinking like, wow, like she put so much thought into it. And really it was simple, easy, and inexpensive. In the description, I'm gonna include a few recipes that I found for each of these items. Moving on, so the third thing is an olive oil dip. This is such a simple but effective dish that also makes people feel warm and cozy. All you would need for this is olive oil. You would need an extra virgin olive oil, something that has like that really like heavy, authentic olive oil taste. If anything, that would be where you spend a little bit. You can do fresh or dried herbs. Me personally, I would probably go with the fresh herbs just because I like using fresh herbs. So the herbs you would look for are things like oregano, parsley, crushed red pepper flakes, garlic powder, and maybe you could chop up some fresh garlic and have it in there. Some people in their olive oil dips, they like to add balsamic vinegar in it as well. So it has like this different color scheme going on. Any combination of this nonetheless would be absolutely delicious, and I think your guests would love it. Especially you get bonus points if you bring out like a warm bread to go with the olive oil dip. You seriously can't go wrong. And it looks so well thought out. I would love you if you brought this out to me and you hosted me. Now for the breads, you would want to do like a focaccia or French bread, sourdough bread, Italian bread, or maybe even a pita bread. I don't want to overthink this part because most breads will work as long as you can like dip it in there. People are happy. Because sourdough bread is having its moment in 2024, and I think this will continue, I definitely think that might be one of my staples, especially because it's so like gut healthy. So next up on the list is veggies and hummus. Now that's pretty obvious. Veggies and hummus, any sort of vegetable with like a dip is a great go-to. It's typically inexpensive, especially if you're gonna source the vegetables yourself instead of buying like a pre-made platter. In some cases that is cheaper, in some cases it's not. It just depends on where you're sourcing everything. Don't sleep on the farmer's market also. And plus that's a fun trip. Like to go to the farmer's market before you host is like, you can then let your guests know that everything is from local farms. Not everybody would point that out, but I definitely would because that's just how I roll. Somebody comes over, I want them to know the thought that was put into it. Like, hey, this wine pairs well with this. Just so you know, I need you to know that I really thought about this. I would say under that same umbrella of vegetables in a dip would be cucumbers and tzatziki, or carrots and tzatziki, broccoli and tzatziki, or you could even do chicken skewers with tzatziki. Very simple, still well thought out, and absolutely delicious. Next to last is gonna be our fruit skewers. You can either have strawberries and bananas and maybe some grapes on a skewer. For Christmas, I've been seeing a lot of strawberries with the bananas on a skewer, and I think that's really cute because somehow you can make it look like a Santa hat or something like that. I think that's so cute. Like, you can really play around with this, and it's inexpensive, and it shows that you put thought into it. Last but very not least, homemade meatballs are out of this world and not super expensive to make. I actually want to include homemade meatballs in my next dinner party or whatever I'm hosting because they are so absolutely delicious, y'all. I swear. Like, I don't know what it is about the breadcrumbs and the freshly grated cheese inside the meatballs itself. You can tell the difference. It's a huge difference between freshly made meatballs and store-bought. However, meatballs and marinara sauce nonetheless are a great addition to any type of appetizer or hors d'oeuvres assortment that you are creating. Not only can you buy them frozen, but if you did want to make them homemade, you would certainly wow your guests. They're just bomb. Like, I don't really know how else to put it, but super inexpensive. You can either buy this pre-made, like I said, or you can make it yourself homemade, which I think gives you extra brownie points. And then maybe have like an olive oil and bread dip on the side, some warm spiced nuts. That combination right there is very inexpensive. Get your guests really excited about whatever it is that you're hosting because the food is just that bomb. So these are my final tips if you are hosting on a budget. If you're going to host people over or have people over and you're gonna serve heavy hors d'oeuvres or appetizers, so to speak, I don't think you should host for more than 2 hours. And the reason why I say that is because if people are traveling to you for whatever the occasion is, of course they would love to see you, they would love to spend more time with you, but they are eventually gonna want something heavy to eat. And if your plan isn't to go out to eat with them afterwards, then, you know what I mean? Eating is gonna be a question and you don't want your guests to be hungry, obviously. After I would say about an hour or two, I think people are ready to kind of like get something heavy, or if it's around dinner time, you gotta be careful about that. Just something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that your display is gonna be absolutely everything. The attention that you put into the display of the food is really gonna go a long way in terms of how the overall feel of your guests coming over and seeing what you've put out or what you've prepared for them. So having things like skewers and toothpicks and maybe some little mini forks, you know, you can get all of these things fairly inexpensively at a local dollar store, Walmart. It really just makes the whole experience feel a little more elevated, and it shows that you really put thought and time into it because you did. And last but certainly not least, I would say about 3 heavy hors d'oeuvres would really do the trick for the people that you're hosting. You don't want to do too much and you don't want to do too little, but depending on what your plans are for the night, if you're just having people over to just talk, have some wine, catch up, I would say to go with more of the heavier hors d'oeuvres. But if you're doing something like you're meeting up at your house before you go out and spend a night, you know, out just hanging out with your friends, then I would say probably go for the lighter ones because there's obviously the possibility that you may eat again that night. Overall, there aren't a ton of rules to follow with this, but I hope that this helps you to feel a little bit more comfortable hosting when you're on a budget, because if anyone understands, I certainly understand how expensive things can get. I mean, for me, I remember when I made my first charcuterie board, it was upwards of like $50. And I was like, wait a minute, I could have paid somebody to do this. But it is well worth it to be able to spend time with the people that you love. So I hope that you give this a try. And if any of the recipes work out for you, or if you try any of these ideas, let me know in the comments. Please be sure to like it, be sure to subscribe. We need more friends on this channel, and I will see you next time.